In a quiet little town where life moved slowly, there lived a boy named Marcus. He was tall for his age, with dark skin that gleamed under the sun, and a shy smile that rarely left his face. Marcus wasn't like other kids in his neighborhood. While most spent their free time playing basketball or hanging out at the park, Marcus had one obsession: cars. He loved everything about them: the way they roared to life when you turned the key, the smooth hum of their engines as they sped down the highway, and even the smell of fresh leather seats inside a brand new vehicle. To Marcus, cars weren't just machines. They were symbols of freedom, adventure, and possibility. From the time he was a child, Marcus dreamed of owning his first car. It wasn't just about having something to drive. It meant independence, proving to himself and everyone around him that he could achieve what he set his mind to. But dreams didn't come easy, especially not in Marcus's world. His family wasn't rich. In fact, they struggled sometimes. Money was tight, and luxuries like fancy clothes or expensive gadgets were out of the question. Still, Marcus refused to let that stop him. If anything, it made him work harder. Every weekend, Marcus took on odd jobs to earn extra cash. He mowed lawns, cleaned gutters, washed cars, and even helped neighbors carry groceries. Whatever job came his way, no matter how small, he did it with pride. Slowly but surely, he began saving every penny he earned. At night, after finishing his homework, he'd sit by the kitchen table counting the coins and bills in his savings jar. Each dollar brought him closer to his goal, and each step filled him with hope. Finally, after months of hard work, Marcus reached a milestone. He had saved enough money to visit the local car dealership. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting. For on a bright Saturday morning, Marcus woke up early, showered, and dressed in his best outfit: a crisp white shirt tucked neatly into faded blue jeans. He polished his sneakers until they sparkled and combed his hair carefully. Standing in front of the mirror, he took a deep breath. "You've got this," he whispered to himself before heading out the door. The car dealership was located on the outskirts of town, surrounded by wide open spaces and rows of shiny vehicles parked outside. As Marcus approached the building, his heart raced with excitement. Through the glass windows, he could see rows of cars glimmering under bright lights. Sports cars, sedans, SUVs, they all looked incredible. For a moment, Marcus forgot about his nerves and simply marveled at the sight. These weren't just cars. They were dreams on wheels. But as soon as Marcus stepped inside the showroom, his confidence wavered. The atmosphere was different here. People walked around with expensive suits and designer bags, chatting casually about horsepower and mileage. Salespeople buzzed from one customer to another, shaking hands and exchanging business cards. And then there was Marcus, young, inexperienced, and painfully aware that he didn't quite fit in. A middle-aged man in a striped tie noticed Marcus lingering near the entrance. He walked over with a forced smile plastered across his face. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. Marcus swallowed hard, feeling the weight of judgment in those 3 simple words. Still, he nodded firmly. "Yes, sir, I'm looking to buy my first car." The salesperson raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Your first car, huh?" he said, his voice laced with disbelief. Without waiting for a response, he gestured vaguely toward the back of the showroom. "Well, we've got some options over there for, people on a budget." His choice of words stung, but Marcus tried to brush it off. He followed the man, determined not to let anyone ruin this special day. As they wandered through the showroom, the salesperson barely hid his disdain. He pointed out cars without enthusiasm, dismissing Marcus's questions with vague answers. When Marcus asked about financing options, the man shrugged and muttered something about credit checks and down payments. It was clear he didn't take Marcus seriously. Every glance, every comment felt like a punch to the gut. Marcus clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. He reminded himself why he was here: to fulfill his dream, not to prove anything to anyone else. But the more the salesperson talked down to him, the angrier Marcus became. Why couldn't this man see past his appearance? Didn't he deserve the same respect as any other customer? Despite the growing tension, Marcus refused to give up. He continued asking questions, inspecting cars, and imagining himself behind the wheel. Deep down, he knew he belonged here just as much as anyone else. This was his moment, and nobody, not even a rude salesperson, could take that away from him. By the time they reached the end of the showroom, Marcus's patience was wearing thin. The salesperson seemed eager to get rid of him, checking his watch repeatedly and avoiding eye contact. "Listen, kid," he finally said. "Maybe you should think about saving up a bit more before coming back. Some of these cars might be too much for you right now." Marcus stared at the man, his chest tightening with frustration. Was this really how it was going to end? After all the hours he'd worked, all the sacrifices he'd made, was he still going to be treated like he didn't belong? For a brief second, he considered walking out and never looking back. But something stopped him. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was determination, or maybe it was the faint hope that things could still turn around. Just as Marcus was about to leave, the sound of footsteps echoed through the showroom. A familiar voice called out, "Marcus, what are you doing here?" Turning around, Marcus froze. Standing a few feet away was his father, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, exuding confidence and authority. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. What was his dad doing at a car dealership? And why did the salesperson suddenly look so nervous? As the pieces began falling into place, Marcus realized this trip to the dealership was about to change his life, in ways he never imagined. Little did he know the real story was only beginning. Marcus's mind raced as he stood frozen in the middle of the showroom, staring at his father. What was happening? His dad, Mr. Thompson, wasn't supposed to be here. Marcus had always thought of him as a hard-working man who came home tired every evening, dressed in simple clothes and carrying a briefcase filled with papers. But now, seeing him in that perfectly tailored suit standing tall and commanding attention, was surreal. The salesperson, whose name tag read Greg, seemed to notice Mr. Thompson too. His entire demeanor changed in an instant. Gone was the dismissive attitude he'd shown toward Marcus earlier. Instead, Greg practically sprinted across the showroom floor, his face lighting up with a wide, insincere smile. "Mr. Thompson," he exclaimed, extending his hand eagerly. "So glad you're here today. How can I assist you?" Marcus watched silently as Greg fawned over his father, completely ignoring him now. It was almost comical how quickly Greg shifted gears. One moment he was treating Marcus like he didn't belong. The next he was bending over backward to impress his dad. Marcus felt a mix of confusion and anger bubbling inside him. Why was Greg acting so differently? And why hadn't his father ever mentioned working at places like this? Mr. Thompson glanced between Greg and Marcus, clearly sensing the tension in the air. Raising an eyebrow, he asked, "Actually, I'm here for my son. He's looking to buy his first car." The words hung heavily in the room, like thunderclouds before a storm. Greg froze mid-smile, his eyes darting nervously between father and son. For the first time, Marcus saw real fear flicker across Greg's face. Oh, of course," Greg stammered, trying to recover. "Well, we were just discussing some options." He turned to Marcus, forcing another grin. "Your taste is excellent, young man. That sedan you liked earlier? Let me show you some details about it." But Marcus wasn't buying it. He could see right through Greg's sudden change of heart. Just moments ago, Greg had dismissed him outright, assuming he couldn't afford anything decent. Now, all of a sudden, he was pretending to care. Marcus clenched his fists tightly, feeling the sharp sting of humiliation. He wanted to say something, to call Greg out for his hypocrisy, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, Marcus looked at his father, searching for answers. "Dad, what are you doing here?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly. Part of him hoped his dad would explain everything, clear up the awkwardness and make sense of the situation, but another part of him braced for disappointment. Had his father known about Greg's behavior all along? Was this some kind of test? Mr. Thompson sighed deeply, running a hand through his neatly styled hair. "I'll explain everything later, son," he said softly. Then turning to Greg, he added firmly, "For now, let's focus on helping Marcus find the right car. Treat him with the same respect you'd give any other customer." Greg nodded vigorously, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Absolutely, Mr. Thompson, of course. He motioned for Marcus to follow him back to the sedan he'd admired earlier. Reluctantly, Marcus trailed behind, still struggling to process what was happening. As they walked, Greg launched into a rehearsed spiel about the car's features, its advanced engine technology, leather interior, and state-of-the-art sound system. But Marcus barely heard a word. His thoughts were consumed by questions about his father and the strange dynamic unfolding around him. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson lingered nearby, observing the interaction closely. He could tell that Marcus was upset, though his son tried to hide it. The pain in Marcus's eyes was unmistakable, and it tugged at Mr. Thompson's heart. He hated seeing his child treated unfairly, but at the same time, he knew this was an important lesson, one that couldn't be taught through lectures or advice alone. Life had a way of revealing truths in unexpected ways, and today was shaping up to be one of those moments. As Greg continued rambling about the car's specifications, Marcus interrupted abruptly. "Why are you being so nice to me now?" he demanded, his voice louder than intended. Several heads turned in their direction, but Marcus didn't care. He needed answers. "A few minutes ago, you acted like I didn't even deserve to look at these cars. Now you're acting like my best friend." "Why?" Greg flinched, caught off guard by the directness of the question. For a split second, he considered lying, or maybe deflecting the blame onto someone else. But one glance at Mr. Thompson's stern expression stopped him cold. Clearing his throat nervously, Greg mumbled, I may have misjudged you earlier. I apologize if I came across as rude." Marcus crossed his arms, unimpressed. "That's not good enough," he shot back. "You judged me based on how I looked, didn't you? You assumed I didn't have money because I'm young and black, right?" The accusation hit Greg like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss for words. The truth was undeniable. Yes, he had judged Marcus unfairly, but admitting it aloud felt impossible. Instead, Greg stammered, awkwardly avoiding eye contact. I assure you that's not how we operate here." Before Greg could finish, Mr. Thompson stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Enough," he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Let's move past this. Marcus deserves better than excuses." With that, Mr. Thompson took charge of the conversation, guiding Greg through the process of discussing financing options and warranties. Though Marcus appreciated his father stepping in, he couldn't shake the lingering bitterness. This wasn't just about Greg. It was about all the times people had underestimated him because of his appearance or background. It was about the countless microaggressions he'd faced growing up, the subtle reminders that he didn't belong in certain spaces unless he proved himself worthy. By the time they wrapped up the discussion, Marcus felt drained. The initial excitement of buying his first car had faded, replaced by a heavy mix of emotions. He was angry, at Greg, at society, at the unfairness of it all. Yet beneath the anger, there was also pride. Despite everything, he hadn't backed down. He'd stood his ground and demanded respect, even when it felt like the odds were stacked against him. As they prepared to leave the dealership, Mr. Thompson pulled Marcus aside for a quiet moment. "I know today was tough," he began, his voice soft but steady. "And I'm sorry you had to go through that. But remember this. Your worth isn't determined by what others think of you. You've worked hard for this, and no one can take that away from you." Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words. They offered some comfort, but the wounds from the day's events wouldn't heal overnight. Still, he resolved to keep moving forward. If anything, this experience had strengthened his resolve. He wouldn't let anyone define him. Not Greg, not society, not anyone. Back at home that evening, Marcus sat on the couch, staring at the brochure for the sedan he'd chosen. Though he hadn't finalized the purchase yet, he knew it was only a matter of time. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to prove himself. And while the road ahead might not always be smooth, Marcus was ready to face it head-on, with courage, determination, and the unwavering belief that he deserved to chase his dreams no matter what obstacles stood in his way. The drive home from the dealership was quiet, the kind of silence that buzzed with unspoken thoughts. Marcus stared out the car window, watching the trees blur past as his father navigated the winding roads. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, confusion, pride, and a lingering sense of betrayal. He couldn't stop replaying the events of the day in his head. How could Greg have treated him so poorly just because of how he looked? And why had his father never mentioned his connection to the dealership, or his success in general? Finally, unable to hold it in any longer, Marcus broke the silence. "Dad," he began hesitantly, turning to face his father. "Why didn't you tell me who you really are?" Mr. Thompson glanced at his son briefly before focusing back on the road. His expression softened, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's complicated, Marcus," he replied after a pause. "I wanted you to grow up understanding the value of hard work, not relying on privilege or status." Marcus frowned, shaking his head. "But that doesn't make sense. You let me walk into that dealership thinking I'd be judged fairly, and instead, I got humiliated. If you're someone important, if people respect you, why keep it a secret?" His voice cracked slightly toward the end, betraying the hurt he'd been trying to hide. Mr. Thompson sighed deeply, pulling the car over to the side of the road. He turned off the engine and faced Marcus fully, his hands resting on the steering wheel. "Let me explain something, son," Mr. Thompson said, his tone calm but firm. "When I was your age, I faced the same kind of judgment you did today. People saw my skin color first and assumed they knew everything about me, where I came from, what I was capable of, whether I belonged in certain spaces. It wasn't easy, but those experiences taught me resilience. They forced me to prove myself over and over again until no one could deny my worth." He paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. "As I built my career and became successful, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't shield you from those challenges. I wanted you to learn the same lessons I did, to understand that your value comes from within, not from a title or a bank account. That's why I never flaunted my position or told you about my role at the company." Marcus listened intently, his chest tightening with conflicting feelings. On one hand, he understood his father's reasoning. Growing up, Mr. Thompson had always emphasized humility and perseverance, encouraging Marcus to take pride in earning things on his own merit. But on the other hand, the secrecy felt like a betrayal. Hadn't his dad realized how painful it would be for Marcus to face discrimination alone? "I get what you're saying," Marcus admitted quietly, looking down at his lap. "But it still hurts, Dad. Knowing that you could have stepped in sooner, knowing that people treat me differently because of how I look, it's exhausting." Mr. Thompson reached over and placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "I know it is, son. Believe me, I know. And I'm sorry if my decision caused you pain. But I also believe that today showed you something important, that you're stronger than you think. You stood up to Greg when he tried to dismiss you. You demanded respect when others might have stayed silent. Those are qualities money can't buy." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the conversation hung heavy in the air, but it also brought a strange sense of clarity. Marcus realized his father wasn't perfect. He had flaws just like anyone else. But his intentions were good, even if the execution left much to be desired. Eventually, Marcus nodded slowly. "Okay," he said, his voice steadier now. "I get it. You wanted me to figure things out for myself. But next time, maybe give me a heads up, yeah? So I don't feel blindsided like this." A small smile tugged at the corners of Mr. Thompson's lips. "Deal," he agreed, giving Marcus's shoulder a gentle squeeze. "And for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Today wasn't easy, but you handled it with grace and strength. Not everyone could do that." The rest of the ride home passed. In companionable silence, both father and son lost in their thoughts. When they arrived, Marcus headed straight to his room, needing some time to process everything. As he sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling, he replayed the conversation with his dad in his mind. For the first time, he saw the bigger picture, not just the humiliation at the dealership, but the lessons hidden beneath it. Later that evening, Mr. Thompson joined Marcus in his room, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He handed one to his son and sat down beside him. "So," he said casually, "what's the plan? Are you still interested in buying that sedan?" Marcus took a sip of the warm drink, considering the question. Despite everything that had happened, he hadn't changed his mind about wanting the car. It represented more than just transportation. It symbolized his independence, his hard work, and his refusal to let anyone define him. "Yeah," he replied finally. "I still want it, but I'll go back tomorrow after I've had some time to think." Mr. Thompson nodded approvingly. "Good choice. Take your time. And remember, no matter what happens, I'm here to support you." The reassurance meant a lot to Marcus. Though the day had been tough, he felt a renewed sense of determination. Life wasn't always fair, but he was learning how to navigate its challenges with courage and integrity. With his father by his side, and the wisdom gained from their talk, he knew he could overcome anything. That night, as Marcus drifted off to sleep, he dreamed of driving down an open road, wind rushing through his hair and music blasting from the speakers. In his dream, there were no judgments, no assumptions, just freedom and possibility stretching endlessly ahead. And though the real world might not be as simple, Marcus vowed to create that same sense of liberation in his waking life, one step at a time. The following morning, Marcus woke up feeling lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He dressed carefully, choosing the same outfit he'd worn to the dealership the day before. This time, however, he carried himself differently, with confidence and purpose. As he walked out the door, his father called after him. "Remember, son," Mr. Thompson said with a proud smile, "you belong wherever you choose to go." With those words echoing in his mind, Marcus set off toward the dealership once more, ready to face whatever came his way. The next morning, Marcus returned to the car dealership with a newfound sense of purpose. This time, he wasn't just buying a car. He was proving a point. As he stepped out of the bus that dropped him off near the showroom, he straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath. The bright sunlight reflected off the polished hoods of the cars parked outside, but Marcus barely noticed their gleam. His focus was sharp, his mind clear. Today would be different. Walking into the showroom, Marcus immediately spotted Greg standing near the front desk, chatting casually with another salesperson. When Greg saw Marcus approaching, his face paled slightly. Clearly, he hadn't expected the young man to come back so soon, or at all. For a moment, Greg hesitated, unsure of how to react. But then, remembering Mr. Thompson's stern warning from the previous day, he plastered on a wide, overly enthusiastic smile. "Marcus, welcome back," Greg said, rushing over to greet him. "What can I do for you today?" Marcus didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked Greg directly in the eye, letting the silence stretch between them. It was a small act of defiance, one that made Greg shift uncomfortably under his gaze. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I'm here to finalize the purchase of the sedan we discussed yesterday." Greg nodded quickly, his smile faltering for a split second before returning. Of course, right this way." He gestured toward the same sleek sedan Marcus had admired the day before. As they walked, Greg launched into another rehearsed spiel about the car's features and benefits, but Marcus tuned him out, focusing instead on the bigger picture. He wasn't going to let Greg's insincerity distract him anymore. When they reached the car, Marcus interrupted Greg mid-sentence. "Listen," he said, folding his arms across his chest. "I don't need another sales pitch. I've already decided what I want. Let's just get down to business." Greg blinked in surprise, clearly unaccustomed to being spoken to so assertively by someone his age. Sure thing," he stammered, pulling out a clipboard and some paperwork. "Let's go over the financing options and sign the necessary documents." As Greg guided Marcus through the process, Marcus paid close attention to every detail. He asked thoughtful questions, double-checked numbers, and ensured he understood exactly what he was agreeing to. Unlike the day before, when Greg had dismissed his inquiries with vague answers, Marcus now demanded clarity and got it. By the end of the session, even Greg seemed impressed, albeit reluctantly, by Marcus's thoroughness. While waiting for the final paperwork to be processed, Marcus found himself reflecting on everything he'd learned over the past 2 days. The experience at the dealership had been humbling, yes, but it had also been transformative. He realized now that people would always judge him based on appearances. That was something he couldn't control. What he could control, however, was how he responded to those judgments, and today, he chose to respond with confidence, determination, and grace. Just as Marcus was about to sign the last document, his father walked into the showroom. Mr. Thompson had promised to stop by later to see how things were going, and true to his word, he arrived just in time. Seeing his dad walk in, Marcus felt a surge of pride. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew he could count on his father's unwavering support. Mr. Thompson greeted Greg politely but kept his distance, allowing Marcus to handle the transaction independently. Once the papers were signed and the keys handed over, Marcus shook hands with Greg, this time not out of obligation but as equals. "Thank you for your help," Marcus said simply, his tone neutral yet respectful. Greg nodded vigorously, relief evident on his face. "You're welcome, Marcus. Enjoy your new car." With that, Marcus turned to his father, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. "We did it," he said, holding up the car keys like a trophy. "I actually bought my first car." Mr. Thompson clapped him on the back, beaming with pride. "I told you, you've earned this, Marcus, every bit of it." Together, father and son stepped outside to admire the sedan parked in the lot. Its shiny black paint sparkled in the sunlight, and its tires gleamed as if freshly polished. Marcus ran his fingers along the hood, marveling at the fact that this was now his. All those months of hard work, mowing lawns, washing cars, saving every penny, had led to this moment. It was surreal. As they stood there, soaking in the significance of the occasion, Mr. Thompson broke the silence. "You know," he began thoughtfully, "this car is more than just a vehicle. It's proof that no matter where you start or what obstacles you face, you can achieve anything if you believe in yourself." Marcus nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind his father's words. "Yeah," he replied softly. "It's not just about the car. It's about proving to myself that I deserve respect, no matter who I am or where I come from." Mr. Thompson smiled warmly, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Exactly. Life will throw challenges your way, Marcus. People will underestimate you, doubt you, maybe even try to bring you down. But none of that matters unless you let it. What matters is how you carry yourself, how you stand tall in the face of adversity. That's what defines you. Not their opinions, but your actions." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of distant traffic filled the air, mingling with the faint chirping of birds overhead. Father and son shared a quiet bond, united by the lessons they'd both learned throughout this journey. Though the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, they faced it together, with love, trust, and mutual respect. Before leaving, Marcus climbed into the driver's seat of his new car, adjusting the mirrors and familiarizing himself with the controls. His father leaned against the open window, watching with a mix of nostalgia and pride. "Remember," Mr. Thompson said, tapping the roof lightly, "drive safe, stay humble, and never forget where you came from." "I won't," Marcus promised, turning the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, filling the air with a satisfying rumble. For a brief second, Marcus closed his eyes, savoring the moment. Then, opening them again, he shifted into gear and pulled out of the parking lot, ready to embark on the next chapter of his life. As the sedan disappeared down the road, Mr. Thompson stood there for a while longer, lost in thought. He knew Marcus still had much to learn about the world and about himself, but he also knew his son was strong enough to handle whatever came his way. With a contented sigh, Mr. Thompson turned and headed back to his car, feeling grateful for the opportunity to guide Marcus through such an important milestone. Meanwhile, Marcus drove with a mixture of excitement and reflection. The hum of the engine beneath him was exhilarating, but his mind kept drifting back to the events of the past 2 days. He thought about Greg's initial dismissal, his father's unexpected appearance, and the profound conversations they'd shared afterward. Each moment had taught him something valuable about resilience, self-worth, and the importance of standing up for oneself. By the time Marcus arrived home, he felt a renewed sense of clarity. Life wasn't always fair, and people weren't always kind, but that didn't mean he had to let their negativity define him. Instead, he could use those experiences as fuel to push harder, aim higher, and become the best version of himself. That evening, as Marcus sat in his room, flipping through the owner's manual of his new car, he jotted down a few notes in his journal. At the top of the page, he wrote, "Lessons from my first car purchase." Below it, he listed several key takeaways. Reading over the list, Marcus smiled to himself. These weren't just lessons about buying a car. They were life lessons, ones he would carry with him forever, and though the journey ahead would undoubtedly have its ups and downs, Marcus felt prepared to face them head-on. With a satisfied sigh, he closed his journal and leaned back against his bed, staring out the window at the stars beginning to twinkle in the night sky. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long while, Marcus felt truly ready for whatever it might bring. The days following Marcus's car purchase passed quickly, but the impact of the experience lingered. Word spread around town about what had happened at the dealership, how Greg, the salesperson, had underestimated Marcus only to be humiliated when Mr. Thompson revealed his true identity. While Marcus didn't go out of his way to share the story, people talked. News traveled fast in small towns, and soon everyone seemed to know about the black boy who stood up to prejudice and proved them all wrong. At school, Marcus noticed subtle changes in how his classmates treated him. Some looked at him with newfound respect, while others whispered behind his back, wondering if he was secretly wealthy like his father. But Marcus didn't let it bother him. He knew better than to let gossip or assumptions shape his reality. Instead, he focused on enjoying his new independence, the freedom that came with owning his first car. Every morning, Marcus drove himself to school, savoring the quiet moments alone in the driver's seat. The sedan's smooth ride and powerful engine made him feel unstoppable, as though no obstacle could stand in his way. Yet beneath the surface, Marcus remained reflective. He often thought about the lessons he'd learned during those tense hours at the dealership, the importance of resilience, self-worth, and standing firm against injustice. One afternoon, after pulling into the driveway at home, Marcus found his father sitting on the porch reading a newspaper. Mr. Thompson looked up and smiled as Marcus approached. "How's the car treating you?" he asked, setting the paper aside. "It's great," Marcus replied, grinning. "Feels good to finally have my own ride." Mr. Thompson nodded approvingly. "I'm proud of you, son. Not just for buying the car, but for handling everything with such maturity. You showed a lot of strength." Marcus shrugged modestly, though he couldn't hide the pride in his eyes. "Thanks, Dad. I couldn't have done it without your advice and your support." The two sat together in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun dip below the horizon. As the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Marcus decided to bring up something that had been weighing on his mind. "Dad," he began hesitantly, "do you think Greg will ever change? Do you think he'll stop judging people based on how they look?" Mr. Thompson sighed deeply, leaning back in his chair. "That's a tough question, Marcus. Some people are set in their ways. They see the world through a narrow lens and refuse to look beyond it. But others, well, maybe experiences like yours can open their eyes. Whether Greg learns from this or not is up to him. What matters is that you handled it the right way." Marcus nodded slowly, absorbing his father's words. He realized that while he couldn't control how others behaved, he could inspire change by leading through example. Every time he stood up for himself or helped someone else stand up for themselves, he planted seeds of hope. Maybe those seeds wouldn't grow overnight, but someday they might blossom into something meaningful. A week later, Marcus received an unexpected phone call from the dealership. It was Greg, sounding unusually nervous. "Hey, Marcus," he began awkwardly. "I just wanted to apologize again for everything. I was completely out of line and I regret treating you the way I did. I hope you'll accept my apology." Marcus listened silently, his expression unreadable. Part of him wanted to dismiss Greg outright, to hold on to the anger he'd felt during that humiliating encounter. But another part of him understood the value of forgiveness. After a long pause, he replied calmly, "Apology accepted. Just try not to treat anyone else like that, okay?" Greg sounded genuinely relieved. "Thank you, Marcus. Really, I'll make sure to do better moving forward." When Marcus hung up, he felt a strange sense of closure. Forgiving Greg didn't erase the pain of that day, but it freed Marcus from carrying bitterness in his heart. He realized that holding on to resentment would only weigh him down, preventing him from fully embracing the future. As weeks turned into months, Marcus settled into his new routine. Driving his car became second nature, and he enjoyed exploring places he'd never been before. On weekends, he often visited nearby towns, discovering hidden gems like cozy diners, scenic hiking trails, and quirky roadside attractions. Each trip reminded him of the freedom and possibilities life offered when you refused to let fear or judgment hold you back. But Marcus didn't forget where he came from. He continued taking on odd jobs, using the money he earned to help his family and save for college. Though his father encouraged him to focus on his studies, Marcus insisted on staying grounded. "Hard work got me here," he told Mr. Thompson one evening. "It's important to remember that." His father smiled, clearly proud of his son's humility. "You're wise beyond your years, Marcus. Never lose sight of that." One crisp autumn afternoon, Marcus decided to visit his old middle school. Walking through the familiar hallways brought back memories, both good and bad. Back then, he'd been shy and unsure of himself, often teased for being different. Now, as he strolled confidently past classrooms and lockers, he felt like a completely different person. In the school gymnasium, a group of students was gathered for an after-school mentoring program. Marcus had volunteered to speak to them about perseverance and chasing dreams despite challenges. Standing in front of the eager young faces, he shared his story, from saving money for his first car to facing discrimination at the dealership. He spoke honestly about the emotions he'd felt and the lessons he'd learned along the way. "When people judge you," Marcus said, his voice steady and sincere, "don't let it define you. Prove them wrong, not by lashing out, but by working harder, believing in yourself, and staying true to who you are. That's how you win." The students listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. Afterward, several of them approached Marcus to thank him for his inspiring words. One boy in particular caught Marcus's attention. He was tall and lanky, with dark skin and a hesitant smile. "I want to buy my first car someday too," the boy said shyly. "Do you think I can do it?" Marcus grinned, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Of course you can. Just keep working hard, stay focused, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You've got this." Watching the boy nod enthusiastically, Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Sharing his journey wasn't just about reliving his own triumphs, it was about empowering others to create their own. In that moment, he understood the ripple effect of courage and determination. By standing strong in the face of adversity, he inspired others to do the same. That evening, as Marcus drove home under a canopy of stars, he reflected on how far he'd come. From a shy teenager dreaming of freedom to a confident young man, navigating life's complexities, he had grown in ways he never imagined. The road ahead would undoubtedly have its twists and turns, but Marcus faced it with optimism and resolve. Back at home, his father greeted him with a warm hug. "How was your talk today?" Mr. Thompson asked, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "It went well," Marcus replied, smiling. "The kids seemed inspired. I think I made a difference." "You always do, son," Mr. Thompson said proudly. "Every day, you remind me why I'm so lucky to be your dad." As they sat together in the living room, sharing stories and laughter, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude. Life hadn't always been easy, but it had taught him invaluable lessons about resilience, family, and the power of believing in oneself. And though the journey was far from over, Marcus knew he was ready for whatever lay ahead. With the hum of his car outside and the warmth of his father's presence beside him, Marcus embraced the present moment, knowing it was just the beginning of a lifetime filled with endless possibilities. Months passed, and Marcus's life continued to evolve in ways he could never have predicted. The sedan he had worked so hard to buy became more than just a mode of transportation. It symbolized his journey, his growth, and his resilience. Every time he turned the key in the ignition, it reminded him of where he came from and how far he had come. But Marcus knew that owning a car wasn't the end of his story. It was merely the beginning of something bigger. By senior year, Marcus had become a role model in his community. His experience at the dealership and the lessons he learned along the way inspired him to take on leadership roles at school. He joined the student council, started a mentoring program for younger students, and even organized workshops about overcoming stereotypes and building self-confidence. People admired his determination and authenticity, qualities that set him apart from others. One day, during a particularly busy week of meetings and activities, Marcus received an email that caught him off guard. It was from a local nonprofit organization called Drive Forward, which aimed to provide resources and opportunities for underprivileged youth. They wanted to feature Marcus in their upcoming campaign, a series of videos highlighting individuals who had overcome adversity to achieve their goals. At first, Marcus hesitated. Sharing his story publicly felt like stepping into unfamiliar territory. Would people judge him? Would they think he was boasting? But after discussing it with his father, Marcus decided to take the opportunity. If his story could inspire even one person to believe in themselves, then it would be worth it. The filming took place over several days, with interviews, reenactments, and candid moments captured on camera. Marcus talked openly about his struggles, how he faced discrimination not only at the dealership but throughout his life, and how he refused to let those experiences define him. He emphasized the importance of perseverance, humility, and surrounding yourself with supportive people. Watching the final video, Marcus felt a mix of pride and vulnerability. Seeing himself on screen, speaking so passionately about his journey, made him realize just how much he had grown. When the campaign launched, the response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people across the country, thanking Marcus for sharing his story. Some wrote about their own battles with prejudice and self-doubt, while others expressed admiration for his courage and wisdom. One message stood out in particular. It was from a young girl named Tanya who lived in a neighboring town. She wrote, "I'm 14 years old, and I've always been told I'm not good enough because of my skin color. Your story makes me believe I can still achieve my dreams. Thank you." Reading Tanya's words brought tears to Marcus's eyes. For the first time, he truly understood the impact of his actions, not just on himself, but on others. By standing up against injustice and pursuing his goals relentlessly, he had created a ripple effect that extended far beyond his immediate circle. As graduation approached, Marcus found himself reflecting on the past few years. High school had been a roller coaster of challenges and triumphs, each moment shaping him into the person he was today. He thought about the friends who supported him, the teachers who believed in him, and most importantly, his father, whose guidance and love had been unwavering. On the morning of his graduation, Marcus woke up early, unable to contain his excitement. Today marked the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. Dressed in his cap and gown, he stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the tassel on his mortarboard. Beside him, his father watched proudly, snapping photos and offering words of encouragement. "You've done amazing things already, Marcus," Mr. Thompson said, his voice thick with emotion. "But this is just the start. College will open doors you haven't even dreamed of yet." Marcus nodded, feeling both nervous and exhilarated about the future. He had been accepted into a prestigious university, where he planned to study business and entrepreneurship. His ultimate goal was to create programs and initiatives that empowered marginalized communities, something he hoped would honor his father's legacy while paving the way for a brighter future. The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches, applause, and proud smiles. When Marcus walked across the stage to receive his diploma, the crowd erupted in cheers. Friends and family waved enthusiastically, holding signs that read, "Congrats, Marcus," and "We're so proud of you." As he shook hands with the principal, Marcus glanced out at the audience and locked eyes with his father. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the sacrifices his dad had made, for the lessons he had taught him, and for the unconditional support that had carried him through every challenge. That summer, before heading off to college, Marcus spent his days preparing for the next chapter of his life. He sold his beloved sedan to a close friend, knowing it was time to pass it on to someone else who needed it. Though saying goodbye to the car was bittersweet, Marcus felt ready to embrace new adventures. He packed his belongings, filled notebooks with ideas for his future projects, and spent countless hours talking to his father about their shared vision for change. On the day he left for college, Marcus hugged his dad tightly, promising to stay in touch. As he drove away in his new car, a gift from his father, he couldn't help but smile. The road ahead was uncertain, full of unknowns and possibilities, but Marcus felt prepared. He had faced obstacles before and emerged stronger because of them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he could handle them. College proved to be everything Marcus had hoped for and more. Surrounded by diverse perspectives and driven peers, he thrived in his studies and extracurricular activities. He joined clubs focused on social justice, participated in volunteer projects, and even started a podcast about overcoming adversity. Each experience deepened his understanding of the world and reinforced his commitment to making a difference. During his sophomore year, Marcus returned to his hometown for winter break. Driving through familiar streets, he noticed subtle changes. The neighborhood park had been renovated, a new community center had opened, and businesses were thriving. Most strikingly, the car dealership where he'd faced humiliation now displayed a large banner promoting diversity and inclusion. Below it was a quote attributed to Marcus: "Respect isn't given freely, it must be earned." Seeing the banner filled Marcus with a sense of validation. The dealership hadn't just acknowledged its mistakes, it had taken steps to ensure they wouldn't happen again. Greg, the salesperson who had once dismissed Marcus, reached out to apologize once more, explaining how the incident had changed his perspective on treating customers fairly regardless of appearances. Though Marcus remained cautious, he appreciated the effort and recognized the importance of second chances. Years later, as Marcus graduated from college and embarked on his career, he looked back on his journey with a profound sense of fulfillment. From the shy teenager dreaming of freedom to the confident leader inspiring others, he had transformed in ways he never imagined. His father's belief in him, combined with his own resilience, had shaped him into someone capable of creating meaningful change. On a crisp autumn evening, Marcus stood on the balcony of his apartment gazing at the city lights below. Beside him sat a framed photo of him and his father, taken on the day of his high school graduation. Smiling softly, Marcus whispered, "Thank you, Dad. None of this would have been possible without you." Life wasn't perfect, and challenges still arose. But Marcus faced them with the same determination and grace that had carried him through his teenage years. He knew that no matter what happened, he belonged wherever he chose to go, not because of his background or achievements, but because he had earned his place through hard work, integrity, and an unshakable belief in himself. And as the wind rustled through the trees, carrying whispers of hope and possibility, Marcus stepped back inside, ready to tackle whatever the future held.